An important part of our mission of friendship here in the Soviet Union has been to play for you a great deal of American music. But this mission must work both ways in order to accomplish real friendship. And so we are now going to play for our American television audience the entire huge first movement of the Seventh Symphony by Shostakovich, a work written in 1941, the first year of the war, and dedicated to Shostakovich's beloved and at the time besieged city of Leningrad. Now, just before we play it for you now, I would like most humbly and respectfully to welcome to this audience Mr. Shostakovich himself, and I would like to thank him personally and in the name of my country for the wonderful music he has given us.
You're on the air.
All right. Well, I just can't hear myself, but it's okay.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, now.
Now I can hear myself. I'm Randy Credico. This is Live on the Fly here in Brooklyn. Matthew Hoh is in the house. We'll get to him in 1 minute. He's a guest, and he's going to maybe kind of co-host. This whole thing was slapped together on the subway. Terms of the rundown, Reggie, you know that, right? Reggie Johnson is.
Yeah, you gave me that.
I gave it to you
sort of kind of the heads up on that one.
20 minutes before the show started. So that's because I didn't sleep yesterday. It's a long story. I went to Riverside Church and went to the Ralph Pointer Memorial.
Oh, so you went to, how was that?
It was great. It was really wonderful. A lot of speakers, a lot of great food. And then I got up this morning, I had to move the car because Matthew Hoh spoke in front of the UN Security Council at 9 o'clock in the morning. It was going to be 10 o'clock or 1 o'clock or whatever. And so the guy tells me, be out in front at 8:40. All right, the dude from the Russian mission. So I had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. It's a long, like I said. I'm sleepy is what I'm saying. All right? So we got Ray McGovern, who I called up 30 minutes ago. Can you join us? He said, sure, but I'm kind of tight on time. But we're going to play a little bit of music. Let me get myself together. I always play, by the way, a little bit because they're banning Russian music all over the country. You know what I mean? Yeah. They canceled Shostakovich at Lincoln Center, that very Seventh Symphony. They actually canceled a concert because of the Russophobia that's gripping this country. It's not as bad as it was, I don't think. I think things are getting a little better. But here's a little Shostakovich. We'll be right back, and Ray's going to join us, and our special guest in the studio for the first time, Matthew Hoh. Shostakovich here at we don't ban, we don't you know what I mean, we don't censor. I mean, it's great music. I mean, can you believe that's happening. This is like 1918, 1919
Right.
During the first Red Scare. Then you had the second Red Scare. The same thing was happening. Now you have the Bear Scare, I suppose, and can't say Red Square because it's no longer the Soviet Union. So it's the Bear Scare. And so, the same type of propaganda and anti-Russia propaganda is floating around there, and hysteria and all of that stuff. And it's really, I was there, and I got to tell you something. It's one of the most beautiful cities, Moscow. I didn't go to St. Petersburg, but Moscow is really beautiful, and they have the Bolshoi, theater, which is like the most incredible sight I've seen. And the city just very beautiful, and all the writers, all these statues of writers, Pushkin and Tolstoy and Dostoevsky and Chekhov. At any rate, I don't want to rant about that. Welcome to the show, Matt Hoh.
Thanks, Randy. And actually, but your point about that, this cup of coffee I've got in my hand right now, I got it around the corner, and the young lady who worked in there, she's from Russia.
Yeah.
And she's from Sochi, by the sea, right? And I said to her, "Oh, how are you dealing with this cold weather here? Because it's kind of cold here in New York today. At least I'm from North Carolina, so I'm really complaining about it." And she said the same thing too. And what she said to me was, "You are the first person who knows that where I'm from in Russia is not cold."
Right.
Everyone thinks that all of Russia is all cold, right? You know what I mean? So like
it's 13 time zones.
Exactly. People don't know, I don't want to over-exaggerate or generalize about it, but what we don't know as Americans is incredible.
Yeah. Anyway, Matt Hoh is a retired Marine or former Marine captain, right? You were a captain, and you've been on the show many times in the past, but it was usually with Daniel Ellsberg, I think, the last couple of times with Ellsberg, and then after he passed, you were back on it. So it's been a long time since you were on. When did he die? Like last April, May, June, July?
Yeah, it was end of May, beginning of June.
Right.
Of last year.
As soon as I got back from Moscow, he died.
Yeah, I was very lucky because I spoke to him the second week of May, and then he passed. I believe it was the beginning of June. So I'm I'm very grateful I had opportunity to talk to him in the weeks before he died.
And Ray McGovern did too. Ray McGovern actually, the VIPS, Sam Adams Association gave him an award while he was still alive. Ray, are you there?
I am.
Are you there?
He is.
He was there. There he is.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ray. You got to get some new equipment there because, or we got to get some new equipment here. Listen. I know you got a lot of shows to do. You got to do the Gold Show later on with Judge Napolitano, which I didn't realize he was just in the Vatican. By the way, Judge Napolitano. I didn't know that until he talked about it with you recently. Everybody in this room today, with the exception of Reggie, everyone on the phone or in this room, has now spoken in front of the United Nations Security Council.
And are you trying to say something to
Reggie, you wouldn't go in there. It's a Russophobia, I think, that you have.
Oh yeah, that's right.
You were invited to go in there and run the soundboard and do the translation.
Right.
All right. So
I think that's right.
All right.
Now I remember.
All right, so Ray, you missed a great speech today. By the way, that was really a tremendous speech. Before I have you comment on it, Ray, something that you didn't see, like when I went there afterwards, I said I should have said this, I should have said that. Did you have that feeling afterwards? I thought what you said was perfect. You covered a lot of ground in like 11 minutes, and you didn't go overtime. You didn't repeat yourself, and you stuck to a nice arc.
The only thing and since we just brought him up again, I had thought about saying something about Dan Ellsberg.
Yeah.
Because so much of what I spoke about today was about the dangers of nuclear war. And the last time I spoke with Dan last year, our conversation was about that, where
Right,
things were heading
right.
in Ukraine. And, as a dying man, weeks before his death, this is the beauty of Dan Ellsberg. This is how generous of a person he was. He was concerned about humanity. He was concerned about the real danger of nuclear war. And that's what he wanted to talk about in the last days of his life. So that's, if anything, maybe because I did pay tribute to Stanislav Petrov, the man who stopped the nuclear war in 1983. And, if I could do it over again, I probably would have put something in there about Dan.
Right.
But no, otherwise, I was very happy to be able to speak about nuclear weapons, Ukraine, and of course the genocide in Gaza.
Right. Well, that surprised me that you were able to do that. And it was perfect because there was, prior to this, and it was a surprise move, there was a resolution that the U.S. put out there that was the lamest resolution I've ever seen in my life. And they blamed everything on Hamas and, and they got their 11 satellites in there. They got like this rigged system of the 15. They have like 11 satellites in there. France.
I think, Randy, some of those who voted today in favor of the U.S. resolution did so because they knew Russia was going to veto it, and they just want to make sure that they're continuing to vote for anything that has ceasefire in the title.
Right.
So they're voting on another resolution this afternoon on a ceasefire that actually means something. The American resolution this morning was gaslighting. Essentially, it was disingenuous. It basically said in diplomatic language, it would be nice to have a ceasefire sometime.
Yeah, right. It didn't impose a ceasefire,
Exactly.
and they didn't say anything about the 30,000. Not one time did that woman, who's the ambassador to the UN from the U.S., mention that 32,000 people have been killed. She's more concerned about 100 hostages than 32,000 people that have died. Ray McGovern, I'm sorry to keep you waiting because I know you have other things to do, but your speech at the UN was fabulous as well. Is there anything you regret from, that you left out that you would have, looking back, have liked to have put in? Oh, well, that's why it's live on the fly, folks. We can't, we'll try to get Ray back in here in a minute, but did he sign out? No, he's there. Something, it happens, folks. Something on Ray's end, but it's okay. So continue. But that was, now going in there. Now, I did it, right? And I couldn't sleep for days. Now I'm getting feedback.
Am I okay now?
Yes.
That's right.
Yes. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I was just saying that,
Well.
afraid.
Hold on, Ray. Hold on.
Ray, try again. Okay.
Learned about it less
there
than
it
that
is.
day before. With respect to Matt, I can't conceive of Matt thinking, oh, I should have mentioned this, or I should have mentioned that. I mean, he got everything in there, as you already said,
Yes.
Randy.
I think he
And
does.
he got it in a very, in a very poignant way. Cicero says that when you start a talk like that, you've got to render your audience benevolent, attentive, and docile. And that's exactly what Matt did. He established his credentials in a way nobody else around that table could challenge or even emulate. So it was really, really good. It was only 9 minutes plus.
Yeah, I know.
And I have seen it since. He sent it to me. My hat's off to you, Matt. You did a great job.
I'm getting feedback.
With respect to the proceedings that went before, it was really, really interesting. The Chinese and the Russians really reamed out not only the U.S., but also all those who docilely followed the U.S., knowing, as Matt already said, that the Russians have to veto this, and then they can blame it on the Russians and stay in good odor with the United States. Here's the Chinese representative, for example. Hey, we don't want any ambiguous calls for a ceasefire. We want an immediate ceasefire, and that's a prerequisite for anything else, okay? That's what we need. And, this is a game of words. This resolution is ambiguous, it's defensive, and as the Russian representative put it, it's hypocrisy. There are crocodile tears. And after everyone had spoken, the Russian ambassador said it right out. He says, I want to just comment on that. He said, I'm tired of these crocodile tears. By no means did you cover yourself with glory. You covered yourself with disgrace, those who voted for this. And it's not complicated to explain this. And what the Russian ambassador says, look, we know that you're responsive to the lords, he puts it, the lords, the kings in your capitals in Europe and elsewhere. You didn't have to worry about supporting the U.S. resolution because you knew that the Russians and the Chinese would veto it. And so you're covering yourself in disgrace. Now, he used the Russian word for disgrace, which means about 2 times as much what the English word means.
That's disgraceful.
The gloves are off, and I'm sure Matt, who is there, can give a good account of the the physical stuff, the eye contact and all that other stuff. But I was amazed because this is going to make people pretty damn angry.
Right. That was thrown in there, Ray. Well, there I can hear myself. That was thrown in there, Ray, at the last minute. Matt, you were supposed to start at 9:00. You got moved back or up to 9:00, and then you got pushed back to like 10:30. So I know it's like if I'm doing a comedy show and you're going to go on next and you're ready and you're all pumped up to go out there. And then they say, no, we got 3 other comedians there to go on. Then you'll go on. And so you try to build up that adrenaline again, because you're let down, you're all psyched up and you go out and you're not going out there. So did that throw you off at all? It didn't seem to.
Well, I was scheduled to speak in January and
I know
it got canceled
because Lavrov was there.
A couple days notice. And then so I saw this yesterday about the U.S. resolution, and then I got a text late at night and even this morning and wasn't even certain if I'd be speaking today. And then you get told, well, they might not even have a debate. They might just go to a vote or maybe only a couple of members. But then what happens is all 15 members make long statements and you're not sure if they're all going to say anything. And of course, it's 100 degrees in that room, and everything else. So it does. It makes it into a circumstance.
It's like Sochi.
Exactly. There's palm trees. You don't expect palm trees there.
Exactly.
But no, it was. I mean, what Ray was getting at about the body language, and I think that's what struck me the most today. And I came into this understanding the very real danger we are in, the very real danger of nuclear war. Between the Russians and NATO, and today I feel like I'm on another level with that.
Right.
Watching those men and women there today, not even make eye contact with each other. At least I would have had some respect for the Americans, the French, the British. That if when Russia was speaking, or anyone who was saying something, the Chinese, anyone was saying something that they disagreed with, or who they saw as their adversaries, at least they'd be making eye contact with them. They'd be adversarial in that sense. They didn't even have the poise. They didn't even have, I think, the courage to look at these other people in the face, let alone the idea that there's going to be any dialogue or that they're actually going to listen to one another. The body language told you everything you need to know about that institution, and it just strengthens my understanding of
Was that
how
on the
dangerous.
Gaza or the Russian?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Because
they changed. Once the Gaza thing was over, because the U.S. is the one that proposed it. When that was over, then they went to their deputies.
Right.
The deputies, except for the Russian. The Russian ambassador stayed. But the 2 deputies for the UK and the US both filled in for the ambassadors.
Correct. And actually, the American deputy ambassador, Ambassador Woods, about 15 seconds into my talk, he got up and left.
Right.
Which
I left a lot of times too.
Yeah,
I left every time Malta was speaking.
But you could also tell, and I kept notes on this, of the 15 members, because in addition to myself speaking, there was a member of the United Nations who spoke as well, the Undersecretary General for Disarmament. And I kept track of who thanked both of us and who thanked only the Undersecretary General in terms of
it was the UK and the French.
The deliberate snubs, and also Malta and a couple others that want to be in the good graces. As we were saying, Malta was so and so aggressive, and in a manner that you felt like Malta wants to make sure they get invited to the happy hour today that the Americans are throwing. Right? They want to be on.
But they really suck up to the French as well. Which is really interesting because that's the first place Napoleon on his way down to Egypt. He stops in Malta and takes all the gold. All right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but you see that, and the thing about it too is I felt that, and people can go, it's on YouTube and everything else, but like you could see my talk, and I thought it's fairly even-handed. I mean, do I criticize the Americans more than I criticize the Russians? Yes, of course, because I'm an American citizen. But I also criticize the Russians in it, and I say things that I think anyone who is looking at this objectively or who comes to understand that we have to stop this war. Right. There has to be a ceasefire. There has to be de-escalation. There were things in there that the NATO side should be able to appreciate that I said, but they were never going to listen to what I said.
No. Yeah. And I find it really appalling and a slight to someone with your background. But you really didn't expatiate on your background. You know what I mean? You didn't really lay it thick. You just said, I was there in Iraq and I was in the State Department. But you could have really laid it on for 3 or 4 minutes. And Ray, you as well. When you spoke, you didn't spend a lot of time talking about your service in the CIA in a good way, which you could have exploited.
And Ray needs to unmute himself.
Ray, you got to unmute yourself, but
I'm pretty sure he's listeing to this, and I'm pretty sure he's articulating. Ray, unfortunately, we can't hear him.
Yeah, Ray, if you can hear us, blink twice.
All right. You have to. How do you know he's muted?
Because I can tell.
Ray, you're muted.
Well, yeah.
Well, so Reggie, you have the ability to see if someone's muted. That's like NSA type of stuff where you can see into people's phones.
I guess so. In one way or another. Yeah. I didn't realize that.
Well, you guys continue the conversation. I'm calling Ray. All right. And you can...
Okay. I think. Well, he's still okay. He's. I think that.
But he's still muted. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. I'm looking at him right now. And he's.
All right.
He must have accidentally.
I am Randy Credico, mute on the fly here.
Muted on the fly?
Muted on the fly. Am I muted?
Oh, no. That's
all right.
Way much harder to do.
Here in Brooklyn. And, this is what the beauty of doing this live is that you have these moments. If you, if I do it hello, Ray, would you please mute don't unmute yourself.
This is fantastic. I feel like I'm on an episode of WKRP in Cincinnati.
Right.
At times I really do feel like that sitcom is a documentary in real life at times, because a lot of the things that I couldn't believe that would have happened at that radio station, I believe it now. I've experienced it.
Well, it's radio, so the people that you have on the air are people who like to hear themselves talk. So
that is true.
Yeah.
There is something to be said. You got to be a certain individual to understand and just put yourself in a position where you are allowed or comfortable of hearing yourself and content of hearing yourself for an extended period of time. And for those people who have a lot of good things to say or have a moment of clarity, I mean, yes, absolutely. Right. But there is something to be said about someone that's
I like to
content.
Hear myself talk.
Yeah, like you're doing right now.
Right now. I would like to hear myself talk. Ray does not like to hear himself talk. No. That's the reason why he's muted. All right? So
Ray is shy now?
I don't know. But what I want to do right now,
so many places.
What we'll do is we'll fix this because I want to play for Ray. I want to play for Matt, Under the Rubble. Now, this is a song that we unveiled here that Roger Waters, wrote about 2 months ago one night, and he gave it to us to play. And this is all about Gaza, since we're going back and forth between Gaza and in Ukraine. So listen to this thing. It's really heartbreaking. It's haunting, but must be listened to.
Papa, Papa, I want to go home now. Papa, Papa, please take me home. Mama, Mama, please tell me I'm dreaming.
Got it.
And I'll wake up soon. And I won't be alone. Mama, Mama, it's dark here. Daddy, stop breathing. Mama, Mama.
All right. I just looked at a text message. I can only stay until 3:30. So, Ray, I guess you got 2 minutes left. If he can hear us. Well, there he goes.
Hello.
Yes, Ray. I know you have to leave soon, so get in your last licks. You got to leave in 2 minutes, you say. Well, I think we're going to have to go.
Anytime, Ray.
Ray, go ahead. All right. Well, I think it's...
Something on his end. I think it's something.
We never had problems with Ray before.
Okay.
It looks like I'm on, but I've
You're
got to
on.
go in minutes, Randy.
All right. Well, go ahead. You get the last few minutes before we move on.
Well, I would just say that, we have to think with our hearts on these things. What are we going to do? In other words, each one of us needs to figure out what we do. And as that very brave Air Force enlisted man said just before he self-immolated, you're doing it now. What you're going to do is you're doing it now. And so if you're doing nothing, that's what you're doing, okay? And, genocide, for God's sake, our own country, people like our president and secretary of state, they need to be confronted in any way that a citizen can in what remains of our democracy now, because that's what we're doing now. I've got to run off now. I thank you very much. I really, I thought that Matt's presentation was the best of all of them, including Rogers. And if he's on there, that's okay.
No, I kicked him off. I asked him.
Matt, thanks very much. My hat's off to you. And Randy, thanks for letting me speak.
All right. Thank you, Ray. Ray McGovern, a regular here. And, Ray usually comes out on this vehicle that we're using, Clean Feed, perfectly, but something happened today. What he just said, Ray, about we have to do something. You did something today. I did something last week, and I've been doing it. I have this digital truck.
Yeah.
I had a lot of images, like 20 of them, on Gaza. And it's not dead kids. It's all, they may be dead now because a lot of pictures of kids that are out of the rubble, right? I made a video using Rogers music, and so there's like 25 images. And first of all, I went by the Israeli consulate with it about 10 days ago, and they came out, 2 guys came out and said, we got to take it, because I was filming it. He says, a quick video, right? And he says, we want your phone. We want to eliminate the videos that you just took and pictures. And I wasn't of the building. It's like a big building, and I'm like getting the truck, and you can see the top of the 35-story building. What could I possibly get? It's like it's espionage or something. But that's how nervous they are. And these guys were arrogant. I thought they were NYPD. So I said, I'm a journalist. I'm doing this for WBAI. And I said, said, here are, he said, what kind of journalist are you? And I showed him my credentials. I thought they were with NYPD, and then I see a uniformed cop on the corner, 43rd Street, and I went up to him. Do I have to give these guys my camera? He says, no, but they will kill you. And he was like, not smiling. I said, are you serious? Jeez. He says, no, they won't. Something. And so these guys, I said, you guys, I'm a journalist. Don't yell at me. He said, we hate that truck, is what they said. So now I'm worried when I left the place. These guys are looking. I can see in the rearview mirror. They're still looking. I'm afraid they're going to put like a tracking device in the back,
or a limpet mine. Yeah.
So I got off at Union Square, took the L train to Williamsburg, and came back and took the 6 train and came back on the L. Went up on the 1 train, and so I don't know if I'm being followed by these guys.
Were these guys Americans or Israelis?
They were Israelis, and so they were either Shin Bet or Mossad. Right,
yeah, some type of security service.
Yeah,
I don't know what
they were not local, like Star security firm. All right, these guys were definitely Israeli. I put it together. I looked at them, and I did have a photo of one of them. I looked at it later, right, and he was looking at it with this real nasty look on his face. So I don't know, and I asked the cop. He says these guys it's very tense around here. Everything's very sensitive. And then I went out to Cedarhurst with the truck, which has one of the largest percentage-wise Hasidic communities out there. I didn't know what I was getting into. Somebody said, "Can you bring the truck out there?" I said, "Sure." There's going to be a rally against land sales. By this Hasidic, church or synagogue out there for land in the West Bank, right? They were selling property or land in the West Bank. And so I took a truck out there. I got there an hour early and driving down the main drag, everyone was flipping the bird at me, screaming at me. And then I went to another city and came back after it started. I had no idea what I was running into. To the left were a bunch of blue and white flags and about 250 people, really rowdy. And then the truck goes rolling by. Right on the other side was all pro-Palestinian protesters. The truck goes rolling by, and they start throwing rocks and frozen water bottles at it. And so we kept moving. And then I got out of the truck, and the guy got pulled over and got like 21 tickets after that. But so it's just the danger. And then on the Upper West,
what did they ticket him for?
You can find violations, whatever it was. It's registered for 11,000 pounds. It's a 12,000 pound truck. So they spend an hour and a half with the driver. The driver's black, and so it's a tense situation. You got 2 white cops that are built like the Hulk. But that took a long time. And then they said, you can't drive because you don't have a medical card and all of this stuff. And then the other day, a different driver going up on the Upper West Side, some guy's pounding on my window, like by Chuck Slatkin's house and Bernadette's house, and they're pounding on the window and like trying to break it. And then he calls me, I didn't even want to tell you the names that he called me. He couldn't even see my face, just pounding. And then he's kicking the truck. And then we got out of there. And then there's a car parked in front of us in the fast lane. We were going up out of there. And he parks the car, green light, gets out of the car and starts excoriating the truck driver. Just parked his car right there and everyone's honking. So it's a dangerous occupation going around with a truck like that. Seriously, tensions are very high, and so you saw it today. That's what you got to do something.
Right.
You did something today, and I wasn't expecting it, but it was perfect. Were you always planning to do that?
About Gaza? Yeah, I was. Okay. There was no way I was going to sit in that seat at the Security Council with one, just as being trying to be a decent human being, a morally and intellectually honest person, just trying to be that, let alone all the Palestinian friends I have. So there's no way I was going to sit in that chair at the Security Council at that table and not say something about the genocide.
Right.
Absolutely not. And so but I also too, I knew about just as a notion, this Security Council veto that, in the history of the United Nations, the most the veto has been used by far has been by the United States in defense of Israel. If you add up all the other vetoes issued by Russia, China, France, and Britain over the last, 80 years, essentially.
Right, since 49.
Yes, there have not been as many of those vetoes as there have been U.S. vetoes defending Israel.
Wow.
And so what I said, the way I ended it was that, never again abolish the veto. Never again should a nation be able to protect occupation, oppression, apartheid, and genocide. Because the reason why we have this genocide today in Palestine is because the United States for decades has been able to protect Israel. Right. And so that I want to get that point across. It just so happened they also introduced that incredibly disingenuous gaslighting resolution.
It was almost a promotion for genocide.
It was.
Basically.
It was. I mean,
it was a green light to go into Rafah, right?
And you know what I was saying before about the eye contact and the body language.
Yeah.
So Ambassador Thomas Greenfield, the American ambassador, the only person she paid attention to in that whole time, every rest of the time she was on her phone and doing whatever, the only person that she paid attention to was the Israeli ambassador. That was the only. Everyone else, maybe she may pay attention to the UK or the French ambassadors, or pick her head up at times. But for the most part, throughout the whole session, certainly when anyone who wasn't 100% in agreement with her was talking, she was not looking at them. She was looking at her phone.
I did not see that.
And then when the Israeli ambassador spoke, phone was down, and she was listening to him.
Right.
So it was almost as if the idea was, what parts of propaganda could I pick up? What is he echoing things that are making me sound better, or is he saying something I should say next time? It's this terrible narrative production that goes on where the only thing that's important in that room is to reinforce your own narrative, reinforce your own storyline, and just make pretend nothing else is occurring.
Right. I didn't see her looking at her cell phone or listening to the Israeli ambassador, because as she was speaking, I stood up and turned around and looked at the back of the room. I turned my back on her, and everyone was looking at me and behind me, because I just stood up and would not. So I couldn't make eye contact with her. I did for about a minute, but I was like pretending to be laughing out loud, right, as she was talking. And then I got up and turned around and looked at the back of the room the whole time that she spoke.
The whole thing is such a show as well. This is something I noticed. If you watch the way the room is set up, you got that horseshoe table. Semicircular table. And in the middle of that room, in the middle of the table, and on the floor there, is a camera. A video camera, and the camera turns, and so when whoever's speaking, you see that person speaking, and of course then if you're watching that, you don't see anybody else. And what always happens is they've got their staff behind them. The ambassadors have their staff behind them. And if you ever watch the Americans or whoever, you see when the ambassador is speaking, the staff members are sitting very stoically, and they're paying attention.
They look like statues.
They look like statues. It's only when the camera is faced their way. As soon as that camera pivots to another speaker, they are all back on their phones, not paying attention.
I noticed that.
And so you go in there, and again, with the understanding of how dangerous this world is right now, how we are on the brink of a nuclear war, a nuclear confrontation, unlike we have been since the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is the most dangerous it's ever been in most of our lifetimes. And then you walk in that room and you see that these people aren't even going to make the faintest effort to listen to the other side, let alone again engage in dialogue, let alone again perhaps contribute to this idea of the United Nations as the grand temple of diplomacy, or whatever they style themselves as.
Well, so you got that with Gaza, and then we go to the next one, all right, which years. Years.
Yeah.
First was Gaza, and she delivered the same kind of speech, but she wasn't there for the second one, right? But you hear the saber rattling by the UK, which sounds like someone that's dying, a naked man at a bar that just lost all his money at the poker table, like in Gunsmoke, and he's at the bar trying to bum a drink from Miss Kitty, but he's got a gun. That's the only thing. But he got no clothes, got no money, and that's what the U.S. is, and that's what the UK is. These are signs of desperation. When you hear the bellicosity in the tone of their voice, you say to yourself, "My God, what are they doing up there? They're really." Like, we're telling the Russians that we're going to be there to the very end, and we're going to escalate it. And you got the French just as bad, and I don't know who they're trying to please other than the U.S. Puppet meisters,
Yeah, exactly. And it's madness. It's absolute, complete, and frank madness. The idea that this game is being played, and that's how they view it. They view it as a game. It's brinksmanship that they want to see, as well as, and two, making sure that their bosses understand how loyal they are to this project.
Yeah.
And so their whole work effort, what they're trying to accomplish, is all aimed upwards at their bosses, not any way horizontally, laterally, not doing the job as diplomats. They are propaganda masters. They are not diplomats. And that would be one thing if it was just all rhetoric, but it's not rhetoric. There is a war in Ukraine. It's been going on for 2 years.
It's been going on actually
for
since
longer.
2014.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that whenever they bring that up, it started in 2014 with the
that's such a great point. And my speech was
23,000 people dead in Donbass.
Right. It started with a coup, with an American coup. Right. I mean, so my speech was 9 minutes long. I thought about including sections on that, and I said, you know what, that's just too much.
I was hoping you'd do another 5. I mean, seriously.
They asked to keep it at 10, and so yeah. But anyway, but that understanding, it's such a perfect understanding of how this has escalated and how escalation works. So you do something like a coup, and then how does Russia respond? How can they respond? What other options have you given them, kind of thing? And it just keeps the ladder effect. You keep climbing that ladder, which is called the escalation ladder.
What are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do? Seriously, can you play that little piece by Putin, what he said? And this really boils it down to the crux of the matter, all right? But nobody's listening in that council. What he says in this is like a 1-minute piece that kind of analyzes how we got to where we are today.
What don't you understand? Are we putting missiles near the borders of the United States? No. It's the United States with their missiles coming to our home. They're literally on our doorstep. Is this really too much to ask? No more strike systems on our doorstep. What's so unusual about that? How would American people feel if we put our missiles on the Canada-US border, for example? Or if we put our missiles on the Mexico-US border? As though Mexico and the U.S. never had any territorial issues. California used to belong to whom? And Texas? Have you forgotten? Oh, right, it's quiet now. Nobody brings it up.
So nobody brings that up. I mean, when a point like that is made in the Security Council, they just ignore it, and they got a pre-written speech, and they didn't address anything you said. I mean, it's significant, the point that you brought up today about this escalating, and then you hear the UK say we're going to continue to escalate it.
Right, and the response too from the Russians has been very firm, and we understand the doctrines of both nations, the ability for both nations to use nuclear weapons. None of anyone we're talking about has a no first use policy. Right? You get to a certain point and their doctrines call for the use of nuclear weapons, whether it is the Russians or the Americans. I mean, so this is the danger that we as regular people have to understand, is that if this gets to that point, there will be nothing we can do. The thing with the Russians, and the thing particularly about Vladimir Putin, I wish people would understand, is that in the panoply of Russian government, the Russian political establishment, etc., the Russian elites, Vladimir Putin is very much a moderate. There are a lot of people to
Medvedev.
Vladimir Putin's right that are very, very.
The former president, Medvedev?
Yeah, I mean, they're what you call ultra-nationalists.
Right.
And what you have happen is you have the coup in 2014, of course, what happens in the Donbass, Crimea, and everything else. But then you have repeated attempts by Russia to negotiate, and including the Minsk Accords, which you've had the previous leaders of Ukraine, Germany, and France all say that NATO signed on to the Minsk Accords just to give themselves more time to arm Ukraine, as well as then two Russian attempts to negotiate in 2021, and then Russian attempts along with Ukraine in 2022 that were quite successful at ending the war early, but then the Americans and the British pull the Ukrainians out of those talks. So what you have is you have Russia over a period of more than 10 years that has stuck that has put down red lines, that has utilized action, but they've also talked a lot. And the problem is that the Americans and NATO have disregarded, brushed off, discounted, subverted, however you want to describe it, attempt after attempt by the Russians to negotiate. And so what position does that put Vladimir Putin in? When he's got so many people to his right, when they've got so many people putting pressure on him to act tougher, to be stronger, to be more hawkish.
Right.
This is where you get into where Vladimir Putin and others who may not have wanted this conflict in the way that people in the U.S. think they did, you get to that point of there was a tremendous amount of political pressure coming from his right to have done the February 2022 invasion much sooner, much earlier. And so you do when our diplomats do not understand the other side and the pressures that they're under. That makes this all the more dangerous. What other choice did we give him? He had already used up all the political capital he had in not invading Ukraine in 2014 and 2015 and 2016. He was under so much political pressure to do that then, and he resisted. It takes 10 years.
It's not one person that runs that country.
Exactly. It took 10 years of the U.S. and NATO giving Russia the middle finger, provoking them, right? Putting nuclear-armed missiles in Poland and Romania that can reach Moscow in about 7 or 8 minutes.
Right.
You get provocation after provocation until finally, what else can the Russians do? Of course, look, I'm not in favor of the invasion. I don't support it. I don't condone it. Violation of international law. But it's also not anything that you can look at without the context of the massive provocation.
What would you do if the Russians or China, if you were the president, were to move missiles into Canada or missiles they did into Cuba, right? So you know what the response was. We almost went to war.
That's exactly right. And the idea is that you don't build your time machine to start on February 24th, 2022.
Right.
Right? You don't build that time machine to go back in time and as we do in the U.S., say with, jump back to Israel and Palestine, it's as if history started on October 7th. With Ukraine, history did not start on February 24th, 2022. You don't want February 24th, 2022 to happen. You don't execute a coup in Ukraine in 2014. I mean, all these things build on each other. They're all connected, right? I mean, so the idea of what will you do, you have to go back and understand the genesis of all this, the confrontation, the provocation, the context, and that requires understanding who your adversary is. Doesn't mean you agree with them, doesn't mean you support them, doesn't mean you like them, but at least you get the idea of where they're coming from and what their motivations are. The fact that today in that room of those who were berating Russia, not one of them recognized that Russia had national security interests. It's all about this idea of a neo-imperial power grab by Putin, which it's not. It's about national security interests. Really, I don't agree with the invasion. I think it was a strategic error because I think they're stuck now. But
what were they supposed to do?
That's a really tough question.
They only had 100,000 troops to go in. They were not going to go march and take over the country.
Exactly.
I mean, do you know how many people were being killed in Donbass, and what are you supposed to do?
I think that the Russian plan that played out to a degree was to go in, get a buffer zone, and then with their feint, I believe it was a feint towards Kyiv, at least put pressure on the Ukrainian.
I like that word, feint.
Yeah, put pressure on the Ukrainian government to force them to negotiate, which was successful. And
Right.
we have seen documentation now after documentation, including a major story in the Wall Street Journal earlier this month, that there was an agreement that was produced between February and April of 2022 that would have produced a ceasefire and a lasting peace, that where Russia would have pulled its troops back into Russia.
Right.
I mean, you had this, and then what happened, of course, is the Americans and the British got involved, particularly Boris Johnson shows up in Ukraine.
Right.
They tell the Ukrainians, you are not going to do this. We're going to give you all the weapons you need to win this war. And hey, by the way, Volodymyr Zelensky, you're going to be the next Winston Churchill.
Right.
I mean, these are the promises they made. And now 2 years later, look where we're at. The suffering, the dying, the killing, the destruction, and the incredible danger of nuclear war, which that's not hyperbole. It's not exaggeration.
I agree.
We are in a very dangerous place right now.
Yeah, we are. And I'm glad that we're able to talk about it here. And Matt, the first time I met you was down in D.C., October of 2000, and this is like I'm going off on a tangent, but it was at a rally for Julian Assange. You spoke, Scott Ritter spoke, I spoke. You were there, but one of the people that he didn't. I'm not sure if he spoke or not, but one of the persons that were there, one of the Assange people that was there, was Marty Goodman. Marty Goodman, he just died. Marty Goodman, unexpectedly. I saw him on February 21st at a rally in front of the UK consulate here. Last time I saw him, and that was organized by NYC Free Assange. And so he died, and I did get to see him for the last time. Now, I didn't always get along with Marty. Marty was a cantankerous guy like me, all right? So he did call me up and say, you're going to have some people at this court date on the UC Global suit. And I said, I can't make it because I'm going out of town. That was the last time I think I spoke to him. But I did see him at the rally. And we're going to play a minute of him, all right? We started late, so we're going to go over a minute here. But let me play at least a minute of Marty speaking at that event. And next week I'll play the rest of it.
Thank you. Got it? Yeah. Adjusted to a 5'2" guy. All right. It gets worse every year. All right. All right. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Free Julian Assange. Ceasefire in the Middle East. Ceasefire in the Middle East. It's all one struggle, and it's Julian Assange who exposed Israel and its insane, barbaric war on Palestine and Gaza. Thank you, Julian Assange.
All right, I'll play the whole thing next week, all right? Because we're really running out of time, and we're going to queue up Eleanor Goldfeld, who sent me, I think she sang that day. She sang at one of the, Lee Camp's significant other.
All
right,
yeah.
So she sent me something yesterday.
She is the best. She really is.
She really is. She's really wonderful. She's got it. Does she still have a show here, Reggie?
No, she never had a show here. I mean, she has a show on RPN.
Okay. No, I thought she had a show here. All right.
I wish she did.
Censored. It was something.
Project Censored.
Yeah.
That's with Lee Camp.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
I know what you're talking about.
All right. Well, she filled in for him one time and I heard it.
Yeah,
yeah. Right. Okay. Anyway, she sang down in D.C. at the one of those stand-ups for Assange event, and she really stole the show. She was fantastic.
She is so talented.
Right.
She really is.
We're going to go out with her. So I know you're doing candidates for Assange with Kelly Lane. What day is that now?
Those are our Thursdays, but sometimes things happen where I'm up in New York City or whatever, so we don't do it. But it is most Thursdays we do candidates for Assange. We have on federal candidates, so House and Senate candidates from across the country, men and women who are willing to go against the political establishment and say, journalism is not a crime.
All right. It's really a pleasure seeing you. The time went by so quickly. And you were here 6 times longer than you spoke today, all right? And I still didn't get enough of you, all right? So I want to thank you, Reggie, and I want to thank you, Ray. And we're going to go out with a little Eleanor Goldfarb. You've been listening to Randy Credical Live on the Fly, Reggie Johnson at the keyboard, and we have Matthew Hoh, and then Ray McGovern at times from Raleigh, North Carolina. Here she goes. All right, goodbye.
Back down. I'm gonna stand my ground. I won't be turned around. I'm gonna keep this world from dragging me down. I'm gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey, I will stand my ground, and I won't back down. Well, I know what's right. I got just one life. In a world that keeps on pushing us around, I'm gonna stand my ground, and I won't back down.